What is happening, guys? Welcome back to another Pokemon Sun and Moon Wi-Fi battle. Today, I've got another underused match. I am using the same team as I was in the last video. I wanted to get some more use out of these guys because it was a pretty damn good team and it was fun to play with. So, this is a battle that I had against Darude from Twitter, and this turned out to be an extremely good one just because I felt like our teams were pretty evenly matched, and I could have seen it go either way, honestly. But looking at my opponent's team, the main thing I noticed from the start was that I am afraid of the Heliolisk. That thing is fast as hell, and it puts in a lot of work on my team, along with the Incineroar and like the Rhyperior. He's overall just got some pretty scary stuff. I'm also kind of afraid of the Gardevoir. Those things can definitely do some damage if played correctly, so I've got to find my way around these threats, and let's go ahead and just hop into the battle. So lately with this team, I have been choosing to lead off with Azelf quite a bit just because it's fast as hell and I can get a quick pivot off with U-turn. So I throw Bezelf out there as he's actually going to lead off with Tiffany, which is his Incineroar. Doesn't seem like a very fitting nickname, but I don't judge. So right off the bat, I noticed that he actually ends up going first, and he's going to go for a U-turn, which is going to do over half to me, and that tells me that that is a Scarfed Incineroar. So at least I can take note of that thing is Choice Scarfed, and I can use that knowledge to my benefit later on in the match. So the good news about this is that going for U-turn second actually does have its benefits, because that makes him switch into something, and then I can bring in a matchup accordingly. So I decide to bring in my flat-ass Stanley, who is actually female, I just now realized, but I'm not afraid of Surf, which I know those things do carry because I'm specially defensive, so I'm just going to go for Stealth Rock, as he's just going to switch straight into his Delmice. So he brings out the Anchor. This thing's just covered in algae over here, and I don't really feel like taking a Power Whip, so I'm going to go ahead and switch into my Arcanine, although unfortunately he predicts that, and he's going to go into his Destroyer, brings in Dwayne the Rock Johnson, as I'm just going to go into Arcanine, which was a good prediction on his end because Arcanine really just does not want anything to do with this rock motherfucker. So honestly, I kind of expected his Delmice to go for like a Rapid Spin. That's why I brought in Arcanine, but now at this point I really can't let my Arcanine stay in here. I really don't want to take an Earthquake because that will end up killing me. I'm not a defensive Arcanine. I'm actually a Life Orb, physical, max speed, and max attack. So I do decide to switch into my Lotic here, who is going to come in freely because he goes for the Stealth Rock, which is fine. So one thing I notice about his team is that he does have two Pokemon that absorb water attacks. He has the Mantine, which does have water absorb, and then his Heliolisk does have dry skin. So I've got to be careful about my water types, which kind of sucks because I do have Sharpedo and Milotic on this team. So I went for the Toxic there, predicting a switch, as he actually does end up bringing in Mr. Ray. Seems like this dude should have like some field trips to be attending to. I don't know, but at this point I know that he might want to go for a Toxic. Milotic does do work to his team other than the Heliolisk, so I'm figuring he probably wants to go for a Toxic to try to get some chip damage on me, as I'm going to predict that and go into my Poison type, which is Roserade, although unfortunately he's actually going to go for a Defog, which really isn't the worst news because it is going to get rid of the Stealth Rocks on both sides. So he actually just set those up with his Rhyperior, which is kind of fine, so I don't have to worry about Stealth Rock anymore, as I do actually want to get my hazards back up eventually because it looks like it's really useful against his team. So here, I know that this Mantine doesn't have a whole lot to hit me with, probably doesn't want to stay in and just take toxic damage all day, so I'm actually just going to set up a layer of spikes, even though I do know that he has a Defogger and a Rapid Spinner on his team. I feel like it will be useful because at this point in the match, I'm realizing that there's a lot of switching going on, and I really need to capitalize on that damage. So I get my layer of spikes up. He's going to have to deal with some Legos now when he comes in, just fucking up his feet. So here I decide to go into Arcanine, as I know that this Incineroar is probably going to want to go for the U-turn, predicting that, but it was really not an option for me staying in with Roserade just because it wasn't worth risking him going for these fire attacks. So now he gets to bring in whatever he wants against Arcanine, and this fucking Tony the Tiger out here is just having himself a bad day because I can't seem to find a matchup with Arcanine with this damn Rhyperior around. This thing just looks like he is ready to stick that fucking horn right into my face. So I'm going to go ahead and switch out. I'm just going to go into my defense wall, which is Milotic. I can take any attack from this thing, as he is just going to go for an Earthquake, and that's honestly fine because I'm a defensive beast, so I take that relatively nicely. And I'm going to go ahead and eat up a nice little snack and get my health back to a pretty decent point. So here it seems like it's going to be pretty obvious that he is going to want to switch into one of his water absorbers. So I'm just going to go for an Ice Beam, as he is actually going to switch into his Mr. Ray again. So this thing comes in. I really wish I did have Stealth Rock up, but I only have Spike, so he's not going to get affected by that. But an Ice Beam is obviously not going to be able to do a whole lot of damage to that thing. It is neutral, but it's just so damn specially defensive. Mantine's actually pretty freaking good. I gotta look into using one of these things soon, because it's seriously probably been since like Gen 4 since I've used a a Mantine. So at this point, we're both eating our leftovers and stuff, and I'm going to actually go ahead and decide to switch into my Sharpedo here. I bring in half my Shark, as this thing doesn't have a whole lot to hit me with, as he actually just decides to go for a Roost, which really isn't that bad for me, because I got Sharpedo in for free. I didn't have to risk taking a Scald and getting burned or something, so I am able to get Sharpedo in for free, and this is good news because Mantine is allergic to physical attacks, so I'm just going to go for a Crunch as he brings in the Destroya yet again, which I thought was kind of interesting. Obviously, I wasn't going to go for a water move, so it was a pretty safe switch, but then at this point, I kind of fall for the trap, as in, I get excited here. I'm just going to go ahead and Mega Evolve right after I get my speed boost, so I'm a Spood Beast, and I actually do fall for the bait here. I am going to go for a Waterfall. Seriously, the second I clicked Waterfall, I knew what I was getting myself into, so he's going to bring in Geico, tries to get me to save like 15% or more or whatever. I don't really feel like it, but I am going to go for a Waterfall and just kind of give him some health, so that is pretty damn annoying, and if this thing is timid with max speed, I don't think one speed boost is going to give me enough speed to be able to outspeed it. So I'm actually just going to go for a Protect here. I kind of wanted to scout out what this thing was going to want to go for. Turns out he's going to switch into his Incineroar, who could have taken any attack other than my Waterfall, which I wasn't going to go for against the Heliolisk, so that's a good play. And I know this thing's Choice Scarfed, obviously, from earlier on. I don't want to get outsped, so I'm just going to switch into Flat Stanley yet again, and I'm going to get U-turned on. This thing is just the pivot master. It keeps U-turning. I really wish I had some freaking Stealth Rock up, but now he's going to bring right back out his Algae. I know he probably wants to get a Rapid Spin off, which at this point, it's not the end of the world because I can set Stealth Rocks right back up and make him have to work for it to get rid of again. So he is going to go for the Rapid Spin, and this is actually a pretty funny turn. He touches freaking Stanley here, which is going to give him the Static, and I went for Toxic this turn, so that's not going to really happen. I really would have preferred to get a Toxic on this thing other than Paralysis, but at this point, I'm honestly really not that mad. I can get lucky with some Parahacks and stuff, so that's fine, and I guess that teaches that thing a lesson in touching Stanley. You just fuck around and get staticked on. So I'm now going to switch into Arcanine, going to go ahead and intimidate this thing as he is going to switch out himself, and he decides to bring right back out the freaking Rhyperior. So these things are, I feel like my Arcanine basically knows this thing's life story. We've sat here staring at each other, haven't been able to attack, and I don't want to get Earthquaked on, so I am going to have to switch out here. My safest option is just to bring in my Milotic, so I bring this dude in as he actually ends up going ahead and setting up his own Stealth Rock again. So it does kind of suck, but at least I was able to bring in my Milotic for free, and after leftovers, I'm sitting in a pretty solid spot here. So we've seen this matchup before, I know what he's done in the past, and I really don't want to make any mistakes here. I don't want to predict the switch and switch out myself and then get myself in a bad position, so I just decided to stay in and go for an Ice Beam again, as he's actually going to bring back out Geico, who does take that really nicely, puts him at about a half. And Milotic is looking really useful for me in this match, so I don't want to risk taking a Thunderbolt and dying, so I decided to switch into Stanley here, hoping he might go for an electric attack, but he's actually going to predict that and go for a Surf. So this man is just making the plays, and I'm really having to work for it here. So I don't know how the hell this thing learned how to go for Surf, but he does, and it was looking like I have a chance to be able to take another one here, so I just decided to stay in. I did actually click Earth Power. I really wanted to get this Heliolisk out of here. It's a really big threat to my team, and as long as this thing's around, my Milotic's not going to be able to have a very good time. So he goes for the Surf, actually is able to finish me off, and down goes Stanley, which does suck because I really wanted to get rid of this fucking lizard, but he's hurting himself with his Life Orb and stuff, so at least I am able to bring in my Azelf here, who is going to be faster than this thing. It is the one thing I have on my team that is faster than the Heliolisk, so I go for the Psychic here, as he's going to bring right back out his Delmice. He probably figured this thing, you know, it's like paralyzed, and he's pretty damn specially defensive, so he can take at least one. I am actually able to live my Life Orb recoil, so I go for one more Psychic, and unfortunately he's going to bring back in his Incineroar, who just has done nothing but U-turn for this whole entire match, so I can't really switch Azelf out. I don't want to get pivoted on, and I can't come in on because of the Stealth Rock damage, so I have to let Azelf die there, which is unfortunate, but the good news is I can bring in whatever matchup I want against his Delmice here. So he brings that thing in, and this allows me to bring back out half my Shark, as I'm just going to go for Crunch. He doesn't really have anything that wants to switch into a Mega Sharpedo attack. Obviously this thing is just way powerful, and he lets his Delmice die there. So I kind of traded Azelf for Delmice, which I think he wins in that situation. He got the better end of the stick there, but this allows him to bring back in his Lizard, and I don't have very many switches into this because I did lose my Stanley already, so I have to go ahead and switch into Arcanine. My plan was to be able to take at least one attack and then potentially finish this thing off with an extreme speed, but he's going to go for the Volt Switch, which is a very nice play on his end. The Life Orb is actually going to bring him down to red health, which is pretty damn key because I decided to formulate a plan to be able to finish that thing off later, which you'll see. So I go for the extreme speed as he's just going to bring in his Incineroar, so obviously I'm able to live the Life Orb recoil, but it's not going to do enough to kill it, as he's going to be able to finish me off with a Darkest Lariat. So down goes Arcanine, and I didn't get to do very much with you today, buddy, but I'm sorry. So this allows me to bring in my Milotic on a free switch in, as he can't really bring in his Heliolisk on the chance that I go for an Ice Beam on the switch in. So here we actually see something that we have not seen for the whole match yet, and that is his Gardevoir, which does have Trace. He's going to steal my Marvel Scale, but I have been keeping around Roserade just for the fact that I need to be able to take this thing out with Sludge Bomb and stuff. So I go for the Ice Beam, does a little bit of chip damage there, and I don't want to take a special attack necessarily, and I know that I can come in on pretty much any of his attacks with Roserade. So I bring out the Rose Parade, as he's actually going to go for a Moonblast, I believe. I get hit by a little bit of rocks, and the Moonblast isn't going to be able to do a whole lot of damage to me, so that's completely fine. Although, unfortunately, he gets the special attack drop, which does kind of suck because it's looking like Sludge Bomb won't be able to take this thing out. My plan was just to go for a Sludge Bomb here, but I actually just decided to go for a Sleep Powder, and here was when I took a lot of time, and I was really trying to formulate a plan, because as long as he has that Heliolisk around, I'm pretty fucked. So I get the Sleep Powder off, and at this point, I have to hope that he stays asleep for at least 2 turns. So I'm going to go for a Sludge Bomb here. I know that it's not going to kill after running damage calcs. It is going to knock it down to red, though, and he stays asleep. So that is perfect. And this is going to allow me a chance to make the play that will turn this battle around for me. So I'm going to go for a layer of spikes. Keep in mind, I actually only have 1 Pokemon killed on his end. So I go for the spikes, which I figured would be able to actually take out the Heliolisk upon switching in. So, well, at least if it didn't kill it, it would only have 1 attack left due to the fact that he does have Life Orb. So that was my plan, to be able to take out the Heliolisk. So I go for this 1 more Sludge Bomb that is going to take out the Gardevoir, who was sleepy as hell today, wasn't able to do a whole lot. Luckily, I got some pretty lucky sleep turns there with Sleep Powder. So now he's going to bring back in the Incineroar, and here's where some mind games happen. So I know that he's going to expect me to go into my Milotic, so I decided to actually just stay in and hope that I can try to live a Darkest Lariat. So I actually do end up living it with 10 HP, which was crucial, and that allows me to finish it off with a Sludge Bomb critical hit. I don't know if the critical hit mattered. I don't think it did, even with the special attack drop. So that was pretty damn lucky, honestly, that I was able to live that. But after running damage calcs, I knew that there was a chance. So here he's going to bring in the one thing I'm afraid of, and that is the Heliolisk. It doesn't actually die to the Spikes layer, but the best news is that he is going to actually end up killing himself with the Life Orb recoil. I am going to lose Roserade in the process, but like I said, I was only really keeping that thing around specifically for the Gardevoir. So now he's going to go into Mr. Ray, who's poisoned and not looking too damn hot, as this allows me to go into Cat. We both got our bulky ass waters out here. Going to get hurt by a little bit of Stealth Rock, but the only really thing I can go for against this thing is Ice Beam. I know that it does have Roost, but luckily I was able to get a Toxic off on it earlier, as he's actually going to go for a Toxic on me. It's going to activate my Marvel Scale, which honestly I'm not really too mad at. I guess I am going to get whittled down quite a bit, but it's not the end of the world, and Milotic's looking like I have pretty decent health, so I know that his last Pokemon is the Rhyperior, and I do want to save Milotic to be able to take at least 1 Earthquake from that thing to be able to finish it off with a Scald. So I decided to make the play here, realizing that his Man-Sign probably doesn't have anything for my Sharpedo, really, that could be able to one-hit KO me. I decided to switch directly into this thing. 50% Shark comes in, and he's actually just going to go for a Roost, but unfortunately for him, after the poison damage, it's looking like his Man-Sign doesn't have enough defense investment to be able to take a Crunch. So I just go for the Crunch here, go ahead and take a bite out of this. This is for Steve Irwin right here, fucking revenge, as that is going to take out Mr. Ray, and his last Pokemon is the Rhyperior, which I thought the end of the battle was going to happen here, but after running damage calcs, it looks like even after the Stealth Rock, or the Spikes damage, this thing could be able to take a Waterfall. So I go for it, and I'm like, holy hell, if this thing lives it. He actually does end up living it with like 20 HP, and that is going to allow him to go for an Earthquake, which will take out my Sharpedo, and luckily for me though, my last Pokemon is my Milotic. So I'm actually really glad that I decided to conserve my big-ass Sea Snake, because it came in pretty clutch, as Destroya here is not going to be fast enough to be able to outspeed me, and Earthquake wouldn't do enough damage unless he got a critical hit. So I bring in this thing, and 1 Scald is going to be able to finish off the Rhyperior. So Milotic being my last Pokemon, that was an extremely close match, and I just thought that was a really damn good one. This dude was a really good player. I think it really came down to his Gardevoir sleeping for 2 turns, allowing me to set up the Spikes, because that Heliolisk would have been able to fuck me up. But that's going to be the end of that one, guys. Go ahead and hit that like button if you enjoyed, and I will see you later. Peace out.